This is video 1 for Chapter 17, Investigative and Data-Driven Journalism. I want to keep the videos down to kind of manageable chunks. So in this video, I'm going to cover the introduction and the kind of history of America and investigative journalism. And I'm going to cover the first half of how the process actually is done in terms of carrying out the investigation. And the next video will cover the writing the story and talking about sources. So for the introduction, just kind of noting that investigative journalism is still very much in demand. It's part of how different organizations want to stand out. Everyone can report the same basic facts, but what do you do with those facts? So for investigative journalism, you don't just need to be able to write a good story based on the information that you've been given, but you need to find information that other people haven't found. You need to add meaning to the information. You have to give context, make readers understand why the information matters. And that adds value to readers, and that's the difference between why they will go to one particular site versus another. But that means that you need skills in order to read budgets, which are very much data intensive and numbers intensive. You need to know how to access open records, and you need to be able to find trends in data. And that might be you actually finding the trends or knowing how to make your computer find those trends for you. Now, the US definitely has been at the heart of investigative journalism throughout time. So we talked about the beginning of newspapers and how there were kind of the yellow journalists back at the beginning who were all about sensationalism. But then in the early 1900s, you had muckrakers, those who went and found out about social problems and wanted to bring those to the attention of the American public through journalism. And that's how things like the New York Times got started. Now, one key piece about investigative journalism is that you need to be objective. And I want to be very clear that objectivity does not mean neutrality. You can have a side, but you have to make sure that you always show that you're unbiased in terms of the information that you provide, that you show both sides of the story. So you can, in fact, expose things and make it clear to people that, one person did right and one person did wrong, but you need to show both sides of the story. So oftentimes in investigative journalism, we're not just wanting to expose things like expose corruption or expose dangerous practices, but explain the how and the why. Oftentimes, we're also advocating for change with investigative journalism. And this has come since the early 1900s, but it continues to today. ProPublica is a great example of a site where they not only do a lot of fact-checking to make sure that information is up to date, but also make sure that they get information out that's in the public's best interest. And given what's going on right now, checking their website out for their COVID-19 coverage might be really interesting and informative. They're making sure they're kind of checking all the information that's being put out there to make sure that the most accurate and most the information that's helping people make the most informed health decisions is to the forefront.